What is it about a building that makes us feel close to God? A space where He may be found. Can a building really contain the presence of the Almighty? A structure wrought with human hands, that it could contain the mystery of the cosmos. Throughout time, there have always been spaces where we have come to meet Him. In a cloud, in a fire, in a whisper, to seek the face of God, to hear His voice beyond words on a page, beyond the teachings of men, spaces where God can be found.
Millennials have more information. They can make more independent decisions.
Churches don't know quite what to do with this next generation.
As a church leader, you don't have the same control. What you're left with is influence. It's a wonderful thing. So how do you create influence?
In the last several years, we've really done a lot of research on 18 to 30-year-olds. And more than any other generation in our country's history, millennials are unfamiliar with faith. They didn't grow up with it. They don't have the same sort of cultural heritage of church that previous generations did.
Deep in the heart of all of us, millennials included, there's this question about where does all this fit?
So we say there's got to be some kind of link here between what's going on with the millennials' faith journey and spaces and facilities.
We'd had some relationships with Barna, and they leaned into it when we talked to them about it.
We really never looked at, like, what about the facility itself? So in the field test, we recruited millennials of a variety of different religious and ethnic backgrounds and took them to a downtown cathedral, a suburban megachurch, a city park, and a coffee shop. And there we just asked them to react to the space.
It was absolutely fascinating. When you walked into older space like this, everybody got quiet and softly sat down.
Many of the millennials, when we asked them point blank, where would you go to church? They said probably at the suburban megachurch. But they didn't have the same kind of appreciation for the megachurches as they did for the cathedrals. They didn't walk in and have the same sense of awe. And then we took the insights from that field test and we developed a quantitative survey that we'd sent out to millennials. When comparing the words classic and trendy, 67% of millennials chose classic and only 33% chose trendy. 67% of millennials chose the word quiet over the word loud. 77% of millennials said they preferred variety over consistency. 78% of millennials said they preferred community over privacy. In comparing the words performance and ritual, 56% of millennials chose performance. Out of the research, we really began to recognize sort of 4 themes emerging among what millennials are really drawn to and how they're kind of defining their lives when it comes to church. Churches really have to wrestle with this recognition that they are only a part of millennials' lives.
I think modularity is simply a result of the information issue again. When you have information, you have freedom of sorts to make more independent decisions.
There's a sense that spiritual formation can happen anywhere and all week long, and why do you have to go to church to get that? One real challenge for churches then is to go out to millennials in saying, yes, we know that your spiritual formation is happening all week, but on Sunday, come here and connect to the divine in a completely different way. And this church that you're in can uniquely do that in a way that nothing else in your week can do. Millennials are a very visual group. If they go into your church and they don't know where to go, or it's ambiguous, or they don't understand what something is for, they will move on.
They don't want something created artificially for them. They don't want a bait and switch. What they want is something deeper and more authentic.
These sort of suburban megachurches, they don't feel like church. So when they enter these spaces and they haven't had a religious background, they don't know where they are. Instead of feeling what they were coming for, which was a desire to connect with the sacred, instead they're sort of asking questions about what they're supposed to do in this space.
It's important for millennials to have spaces of non-activity so that they're free to choose how they use the spaces.
They really are looking for spaces to rest and get out of the frenzy of their life.
It's a searching for a quiet place of perspective. It's a quiet place of discernment where we can make some sense of it all. And we can find ourselves in it all in a more clear, healthy way.
What we need to create respites that get us away from the busy world, that allow us to connect with one another and to connect with God.
The sense to get back to nature is the sense to get away from the noise and find some centering of sorts.
Many generations are attracted to nature, but millennials crave it. We found that what they preferred was actually being in those spaces, actually feeling the air, knowing if it's raining or seeing the snowflakes.
In a culture where millennials can go see a concert anywhere and they can be in a beautiful office building or a shopping mall, the church can be something different.
I think people want some sense of awe. They want some sense of a bigger God in all of this.
So often we think of design or facilities as just an extension of our ministry programming, when in actuality, the spaces and places in and around our buildings can be the outreach tool themselves.
It's no different than how we dress influences how people perceive us. So you can't say, I care about you, I want to understand your life, I want to walk with you, and have a space that speaks of either programs or control.
Spaces made by human hands are never perfect. They contain flaws, inconsistencies, but at their best, they can point to something, guide the eye, direct the heart to God, to His purposes, and create space in which He may speak, and His voice can be heard.